Stevie, first time we've had to chat since the January transfer window slammed shut. What words would you use to describe January?
It was very busy. That was the biggest thing. Obviously, we're trying to transform our squad to try and stay up, but I don't know if you were there on deadline day with me in the back office where the phone was going every 30 seconds. That was kind of how it was for the whole month, so pleased the window was closed and we can now get on with the rest of the season.
And you arrived, didn't you, in your role sort of the start of November. At what point did you start planning for January?
To be honest, during the interview process, I looked through the data, I looked at the analytics regarding the league table, but the analytical context of the league to figure out what is it we're doing right, what is it we're doing wrong, what are the other teams doing. So during the interview process, I had quite a clear idea what we needed to do. Pace, power, physicality is what League One's about in most cases. You obviously have to have some technical quality, but being able to compete physically, that was one of the main things. I don't think the team was quick enough or dynamic enough. And then in terms of our attacking transitions from playing in a low block, which we were 5-3-2 at the start of the season, to trying to transform to what we are now, which is back four based, a little bit wider, more towards a 4-3-3 to try and give ourselves more chances to score, but at the same time retain that compactness. So to get the squad from where it was, which was struggling, to a team which is now competitive, if we take away results, we can feel happy at what we've done, but a lot of the work going into the transfer window was done during the interview process and then in the first 3 weeks in November.
And you mentioned there's skill sets, I guess, pace, power. Was there anything sort of like mental strength or anything like that you were looking for from players? What was
you want guys that are resilient. You want people who are leaders, or natural charismatic leaders. The difficulty you find is that you've got to do a lot of due diligence. You've got to speak to teammates, former coaches, friends if you know them. You can maybe check Instagram and Twitter and that sort of stuff to see their social media and the things that they're into, but you never really know until the player's on the pitch. You might think somebody's really, really determined and hates losing, like I knew Jamie Robson from when he was 8 years old, so we know Jamie hates losing. He's extremely moany, but in a good way, and he's on top of people. He's very high standards for himself, so looking at him as a person, that comes from working with him for 2 years at Dundee United. There's other ones who we don't know. You call Andy Goldie from Swansea, you get great reports on Brandon Cooper. So we've done a lot of due diligence to find players who are mentally strong and capable and resilient, but at the same time, are they going to be culture setters within the group? And I think what we tried to do was maybe not change the culture, but add a freshness to the dressing room.
And so many of those additions were done early. I think Brandon was done on the 2nd of January. How important was that to get the group ready as soon as possible, I guess? Yeah,
the plan was to try and get as much done ahead of the Exeter game on the 14th as possible. The two reasons for that is, one, you want to try and have as much chance of winning your first game within the transfer window. Obviously we couldn't get Indy in for the Port Vale game because that was the first, and then the Birmingham game in the Cup was cancelled on the 7th. So the plan was to try and get as much done in key positions as possible for the Exeter game, but not just on the Friday before, for the training week before. So we had a lot of our ducks in a row, middle of December, around Christmas time, where we knew what we could and couldn't do. Like with Bakayoko, for example, we knew roughly the back end of December that we could get that done, but it was going to wait on Bolton bringing somebody in. So even one of the ones that we didn't do initially, we knew what we were waiting on things to happen to allow that to happen. So we're quite pleased we got everything done, but the main thing is always to give the coach as much training time with the new players as we can, and not be rushing around in the last week of the window where it's you maybe don't get the ones you want, or it's just opportunities and you have to take a lot of guesses that we didn't really want to do.
And what were your conversations like with Dale sort of during this period and everyone else at the club?
Yeah, really, really positive. I think when I first came in, we were told there was a budget available for salaries, and then we could add some for fees if we needed it. So the backing from the club in terms of Dale and everybody else on the board, that's been, I think, blown away by it, to be honest. We didn't spend it all in terms of wages, we didn't spend it all in terms of fees. We were quite aggressive in the market early on. I think players at Erehon went to Lincoln, Doyle Hayes stayed at Hibs. We were quite aggressive very early on to try and bring the big fish in early, but it's not always as easy as people think. And at the same time, the fees that were reported were nowhere near what they were. Clubs typically don't comment on them, whether it's us or Rangers or Hibs or St Mirren, anybody else. I think we made a lot of good business in the window, but at prices which people would be surprised by.
Of course, if there's as if it wasn't busy enough. And then Duncan came in right towards the end of the window. Why is Duncan the right man for Forest Green? What's he going to bring?
I think what we needed was probably somebody who has a presence and is a charismatic leader. If you speak to Duncan, you get that. He's very engaging, he brings people in. He's one of these guys that people gravitate to. I think as a manager or as a head coach, he has a lot of the natural abilities to do that, is to bring people together. I think the difference between where we were previously and where we are now, we're playing a different shape. We're a little bit more compact. We're quicker in the transition. We have less of the ball, so there's always going to be trade-offs somewhere. But I think, it's been a positive start. I think, Shrewsbury would deserve to win. Peterborough, I think a draw might have been fair in the end, and the Morecambe one, I don't think there's any doubt we deserve to win. So in terms of Dunk coming in, look at his pedigree. He's worked under some of the best managers in British football history. He's played under some of the best managers in British football history. He's coached alongside them. So I think that rubs off on people, and he's come and he's made a great impact so far. Yeah,
I was going to say, how pleased you've been with what you've seen so far, and also the fact that he's committed to a long-term contract. You must be really looking forward to working with him going forward as well.
I think one of the worst things you can have is somebody that just says, "I'll come in for 6 months." I think Dunk's got a long-term contract. We know what we're building for. We know the profile of player he likes. It's aligned with what we're looking for anyway. It's strong and physical, because we know we need to compete, whether that's in League One or League Two. I think we have a very clear identity of where we're trying to reach, and trying to not only outplay teams but outcompete them. And I think that's a really important thing to be able to do up and down the English leagues.
You were really transparent with fans just after deadline day, weren't you, with what you want to do going forward? And I guess, ahead of performance and recruitment, some people might think, oh, what does he do? When the transfer window's not going on, what does what's on your plan at the minute for sort of the coming weeks and months?
So one of the first things we need to have is like a development squad. So whether it's a 23s or a B team, we don't currently have the facility to get players who have been injured into some sort of process where they're playing non-competitive games before they jump into the first team. So if you take like Matty Stevens, for example, Matty didn't have that opportunity to go and play 5, 6, 7, 8 games in the 23s or the B team before coming back into the first team. It was very much, can you do 20 minutes, can you do 40 minutes, and build your fitness that way. And it's a really difficult thing to ask players to do, because they want to compete and they want to play to their maximum level, but they're physically not capable of doing that. So I think just in terms of being able to have that process where we can bring players in, develop them, and then put them in the team and give them development time, especially if we bring in 16, 17, 18-year-olds. We're not expecting them to be first team players today, but maybe in 6 months or a year, and that development process is in there. So one of the things is going to be like a B team or a 23s. The second thing we need to do is we need to look at research and development. So what are we doing at training? What are we doing in terms of sports science and medical, return to play protocols, rehab protocols? How do we bring a player in who has not been at the best level professionally, and then improve the physical output, technical output, the game understanding, all these things together to get them into a position where we can push them as far as we can. And then even from a first team development point of view, if we're doing research and development, what is it that makes you a better player? What is it that makes somebody else a better player? Is it for you how we train the brain? Is it for somebody else how we train them tactically? Is it for somebody else how we train them physically? What is it that we can do to try and maximise the output of all these players? So research and development, the B team, we're trying to put in more analytical procedures for recruitment and assessing where the squad is, assessing what a successful team will look like, whether it's League 1, League 2, Championship, whatever. What is the output in terms of the end of the season, and what's the process to align to that, and are our players meeting those metrics on a per 90 basis, but also as averages across the season, so that one, we can accurately value a player if a bid comes in, but two, we can assess who the undervalued players are within the market. So there's lots of different things going on underneath to try and set a real structure for the club to push forward.
You really see it as a long-term project here, don't you? Just hearing you speak there, and it's all stuff sort of going into the future, isn't it?
Yeah, I think like the immediate concern was, can we rebuild the team to be as strong as possible to try and stay up? I think we've done a pretty good job at that, but it comes down to results. But irrespective of whether we're a League 1 club or a League 2 club, we still need to have all these things in place. We still want to build towards a championship, whether it takes 1 year or 5 years. That's the ultimate goal, is to try and get to that level. So to reach that level, we need to have fundamental things in place to allow us to be as strong as possible going through the levels. And also, even from the perspective of like, if we're going to design a new training ground or build a new training ground and a new stadium, like these are exciting projects, and when you're bringing people in, you can show them that. But what does that look like to a player coming in, and how does that help maximise their career? So there's a lot of things going on in the background that we need to keep working on and invest our time in.
Would you have a message to the fans, Stevie, you know, either short term or long term for the rest of the season? What would be your message to them?
Just to maintain positivity, never give up hope. I think, like, even though it does feel bad after you lose a game, and it does feel bad that, you know, some people are resigned to maybe being relegated. What I would say is the team is more than capable of going on a run, and we've seen with other clubs, whether it's been Burton or Cheltenham at the start of the season or Morecambe currently, who went on a good run. We've not had that run yet. So I would say to the fans, maintain positivity, back the manager, back the players, and try and keep pushing us forward, because if it means we have to win the last 4 games of the season to stay up, I think we've got enough to do it. So make sure that we're pushing every day and we're as positive as we can, because even if we do go down, we will be back up.